Hello and welcome to my YouTube channel. Thank you for joining me here today. I appreciate you spending your time here with me. Today I'm going to be making 3 cards. I'm going to be using a 6-inch paper pad that is the Craft Stall brand, and it's called Briarwood. I also bought the embellishments pack that goes with it. All of the greetings that will be on my cards are from 13 Arts sticker collection called His and Hers Remastered, and each card will have inking to the edges of the paper using a colour box pigment ink called Dusty Plum. All of the flowers that are on these cards have come from my stash. I've got a big box of flowers that I need to start using up, and I'm going to use some of this mesh. I'm not going to actually use the silver, I'll end up using the gold only. I'll also be using some gauze and some lace from my stash. I've also made my own card bases. I've used a piece of white cardstock that's embossed with dots, and I have cut each piece to make a 5 1/4 by 5 1/4 inch card. I've gone through the paper pad and I've chosen 6 papers. 3 of them are lightly patterned and 3 of them are more heavily patterned. The lighter pattern ones will be the background and the more patterned ones will be the foreground. I'm going to trim the background pieces down to 5 inches by 5 inches, and the top layer is going to be 4 3/4 by 4 3/4. All of the papers have their edges distressed using my Prima Distress tool, and then their edges inked with the pink ink. Now I'm going to go ahead and create all my foundations. So I'm going to attach the top layer to the bottom layer and then attach that to the card base. My next step is to decide which fabrics or laces I'm going to use on which cards. So I go ahead and choose the mesh and the lace and cut it to size to suit my cards. I'm going to start with this card. I have a look through the paper pad and find a pattern paper that I want to use on the top of the card. I cut it to size so that it is the same height as the second layer of paper, which is 4 3/4 inches. I distress the edges of the paper and trim it down to I think it's about 2.5 inches wide, and distress and ink the edges. I have gone through my box of flowers and dug out a few flowers that I think might be useful. I have this rose ribbon, which is white net. I'm going to use that on here. The actual pink check paper will be stuck over the top of the gauze. I don't use any, oh yes I do, I use foam, craft foam behind the check paper when I mat that. I stick the craft foam onto the check paper using liquid glue, and this is also used to hold the gauze in place. I then mess around with the embellishments. The pink flower that you can see there is a handmade flower that I made many years ago, and it has been in my stash for quite some time, waiting for an opportunity to be used. So I do actually use it on this card. The rest of the flowers are just purchased. For a little bit of added sparkle, I use some scribbles, which is from my ceramic days, This is a clear drying one that it has glitter in it. It's just called Crystal, and I just put a few dobs of that here and there, little dots, to add a little bit of sparkle. I take a small gold butterfly from the embellishments pack, and the embellishments have a white border around it, which I am not a big fan of, so I fussy cut the white border off, ink around the edges with the pink, and then attach it to my card. For the sentiment, I have taken one of the stickers that I mentioned earlier, the 13 art stickers, stuck it onto a piece of the pink paper, and attach that to my card over the top of the fabric flowers. To finish the card off, I used some Tattered Angels Glimmer Mist in both cherub pink and gold to spray over the top of the card to give it a nice glimmer. So when this dries, it has a beautiful gold shine to it, and the pink tends to tone down the white a little. And that completes our first card. Now we're going to start our second card. I found another piece of lightly patterned paper in the pad, and I cut that down to size. I cut it to 4 3/4 by 2 inches, and I distressed the edge. Using some glue, I attached some of this lace to the piece of pattern paper that I just cut. I found a piece of pattern paper in the offcuts that I thought would be good on this, and I attached, I distressed the edges and then attached it on top of the lace. I used my hot glue gun to attach my panel to the card front, and that secured the piece of gold mesh that was behind the panel to the card. Then I also used my hot glue gun to attach all of the other embellishments. I've got a piece of resin and some flowers. All of those come out of my stash. I chose my sentiment from the sheet of clear stickers. I attached that to a piece of the pink cardstock that I had left over from the back of one of the other cards, and then I mounted that on a piece of white cardstock. The sentiment panel is then added to the card using foam squares. Well, that completes our second card, and probably my favourite card for this video. We're going to start our third card now. I decided to use a bit of mixed media on this card. I've got this diamond shaped stencil that I don't know the brand of. I've thrown the packaging away, and I'm going to use that with some Matisse Impasto medium. Once I have put that through the stencil, I'm going to use 13 Arts Old Gold microspheres and apply that on top of the wet medium and let that dry. The flowers that I'm going to use on this card I made some time ago. I bought a book, a pad actually, from K & Company, and it's cardstock flowers. It's just completely full of flowers that are pre-cut, and you fold them, shape them, and then create the flower. I've done 2 of these for this card. I keep a box of offcuts or bits and pieces that I've made and haven't used somewhere, and I've found these 2 pieces from that box. This piece was cut using a Tim Holtz die called Ornate. I've cut it in white cardstock. I'm going to ink the edges of that and use it. And this grey piece is a piece of scrap that I've punched using a Martha Stewart punch. I don't know the name of the punch because I have thrown the packaging away. I'm going to distress and ink the edges of this piece of offcut from the paper pad to use on this little panel as well. I'm going to use some glue to attach all of these layers together to make a little panel to go on the front of my card. I'm going to use some craft foam to attach this panel to my card. I wanted to use this butterfly on my card, and once again I cut the white border off of it. I use my hot glue gun to attach my panel to the card, and while the glue is still hot and pliable, I tuck the lace in under the panel so it just pokes out the side. I now use my hot glue gun to add the other embellishments from my stash. So I've got the 2 flowers that I made from the paper pad, a couple of small flowers from the stash, and the butterfly from the embellishments pack. To give this card a bit more sparkle, I spray it with the Glimmer Mist Gold. When this dries, once again, it gives a lovely sparkle. To create the sentiment, I did the same as for the others. I used my clear label, sticky label, and attached it to some pink offcut cardstock and attached it to the card. That's the end of my cards for today. Thank you for joining me. I hope you've enjoyed my video. If you have, please subscribe to my channel and share my video with your friends. Thank you.